It's time for Myth of the Week.
All right, we had an awesome myth this week. I'm digging deep into the myth bank and going into myth of the week number 115. And this is true or false. Class 1 Div 2 boundaries. A conduit seal shall be required within 10 foot of the boundary for each conduit run leaving the location. And I put where make or break contacts are outside the classified location, but that's irrelevant. And and so this is a true statement. Like I say, James said there's actual exceptions to it, so it could be considered false if you're throwing in those exceptions. But like I say, the reason I wanted to do this was because we had a time where one of the inspectors out in the patch said that we had to have a seal op anytime we went underground because we were changing location. And so, for example, if you were to, let's just say this is a class 1 div 2 area here, then and we were exiting the class 1 div 2 area and then entering another class 1 div 2 area, we would not need conduit seals because we're going from a same classified location to the same classified location. So that would need to be conduit seals, and regardless if you go underground or not. So that's the whole reason I wanted to run it. And like I say, this one, a lot of the hazardous location stuff's like really misunderstood. And so I really like doing hazardous location with you, James, because I know you have a really good understanding of it. And like I say, this has always been kind of a myth where people just say, you know what, let's just put seals on there just to be safe. Well, sometimes you could spend thousands of dollars in raceway seals if you get too out of control.
Sure.
So
One of the things, like you were saying, Dad and I have been doing stuff for the oil and gas industry, chemical industry, and everything for, God, 30 years. And, we actually wrote the inspection report for the Alaskan pipeline at their pump stations and here in the United States, too. And, everything's a little bit different states than compared to when you're in Alaska because it's so cold there. It's done a little bit different. But, one of the things that we were making sure of, we also worked with the people to prevent corrosion and stuff on the pipes and things like that. So that was really interesting. But during that time, we've done a lot of classes with them where we go in and we would talk about the conduit seals. And you heard me make this statement many times before. Most people, when they hear it, they automatically think 10 foot. Well, 10 foot, what that really has to deal with is when you're going from one location to another. That's what the 10
right.
foot really is. Okay. So in other words, they want a seal there in order to keep any type of sparks or anything that could travel through a pipe, and also gas that would fumes that would travel through the pipe. Okay. That's what it's really for, to keep an arc or spark from igniting something from some fumes and vapors and stuff that had built up in the pipe. Okay,
that was really interesting too because when I were out there, we were using some of that CLX cable, and I was actually surprised. I never had to seal a cable before.
Yeah.
And so that is a really good point about the gas traveling inside the cable. Like I never would have thought about that.
You got to seal that cable different. You got to seal the cable different.
Yeah.
Because of the vapors and stuff that can actually travel through the cable itself. So,
yeah.
And that they had a big change on that, was about 2014 or 17, something like that, where they come in and started talking about sealing that cable and everything. We had probably 4 different illustrations that we went over in our publication to explain all of that. And
Right.
I'll tell you another really good, um, in my opinion, that would be a great myth. Okay, say somebody you come in and that you ask them, you're in a hazardous location. You determine the point of the location. How far is that distance from that location? And I'll tell you, because I've done this so many years, a lot of people automatically come in and they'll say, "Oh, that's easy. That's 20 foot." That's not true. That's where you
Uh-huh.
get into like where you have a gasoline station, you got a pump out there, they'll tell you out to 20 foot, up to 18 inches. Okay. That that is a given for a specific type occupancy. Okay.
Right.
And that's why when you get to chapter 5 of the NEC, it talks about special occupancy. That's a special occupancy. But
Right.
when you really get in and you start taking and you figure out, like if you're in the oil field or something, what they're going to look at is they have to determine the magnitude that's within that conduit. In other words, what is the flow through there? And if you got a leak, depending on the pressure that's built up, that thing could be, it could be from a simple drip to spewing out 200 foot. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
what they have to determine. And in order to figure that stuff out, you need to go over and look at NFPA 497 to determine what that distance is based on looking at your table 4.41 and getting into the different chemicals and everything, knowing the type of chemical that's there and the group that it is, what its upper and lower flammable limits are, because that helps determine how high up the location is. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much you have to look at over there in order to determine that location. Okay.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed too is there's a lot of people that misinterpret, because we were doing one. It was like a storage tank area, and the inspector shows up and he's like, "Nope, everything you guys got's wrong. This anything inside this tank area is Class 1 Div 1. Anything out here is Class 1 Div 2. Da 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 da. And I said, I'm fine doing whatever you need done, but I just need to see this on paper, and you're gonna need to let me know what all these classifications are, so we know how to wire it.
Mm-hmm.
And he went and got all the classifications and kind of find out inside that tank area was Class 1 Div 2. 5 foot around the opening was Class 1 Div 1, and then everything outside there was unclassified.
That's right.
So we would have went and did all this extra work and did all this extra expensive parts and stuff if I wasn't smart enough to question that classification.
Sure. You got to learn how to do classifications. I remember when I was chief electrical inspector for the city of Grapevine, and we went out there, they called me out there specifically to go in and look at classification that they had out there. And it wasn't as extreme as what the engineer was saying. I had to explain it to him. He was like, "Oh no, it's got to go." I said, "No, it doesn't." And then when I started explaining, he didn't even know all this. He was just a regular engineer. He really did not know hazardous locations.
Right.
And I always say this: hazardous locations it's different animal. So you have to really learn a lot about it. Now, as you look at this talks about the Class 1 Division 2 boundary, and it says on either side within what? 10 foot of the boundary. Okay?
Right.
Then you come in and you start picking up some exceptions here. And it says, if you have a metal conduit that contains no unions, couplings, boxes, or fittings that passes completely through a Division 2 location with no fittings installed within 12 inches of either side of the boundary, you don't need a seal. Okay? Then it tells you here, you got a conduit terminating in an unclassified area where the metal conduit transitions to cable tray, cable bus, ventilated busway, cable, blah, blah, blah. Not installed in any cable tray or raceway system shall not be required to have a seal. And that's where it's passing from what? A Division 2 location into an unclassified. Then it gives you some of the following conditions there you follow. But what I just
Right.
want to do is just point out the general rule is 10 foot. There are some exceptions to the rule here that everybody can look at as it deals with conduit seals, and it talks about them where they're underground or above ground. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm not going to go through everything because that wasn't really the question, but I wanted to be able to put the text here. Anybody that's coming back and they're reviewing this myth of the week, they can come in here and see what the exceptions to the rule are and what section it come in from the code, which is 501.15b. Okay.
Looks like we got Adam up in the house.
Hey,
Oh,
Adam.